4.5 billion years, take or live about 200 million years.
This is 4.5 billion years.
Right. And I would like to ask Mr. Hovind, what's his evidence, other than the Bible, that the Earth is 6,000 years old?
Oh, I think we could look at hundreds of lines of evidence. The moon is getting farther away.
One.
Okay, the moon is getting farther away from the Earth, about 2 to 3 inches a year. That means it used to be closer. Sure. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure out, if you bring the moon back in closer, the tides start to get higher, and you only have to go back 1 billion years for the moon to be touching the Earth. Now, if you want it to be 4 billion years old, you have a serious problem with the scientific fact that the moon is leaving us, and it simply cannot be 4 billion years old like you want.
Gee, and I wonder, all those astronomers haven't noticed this thing.
They certainly have noticed.
Figured it out.
They've noticed many times. It's been published in many books. Get on the creationscience.com website, and you'll see all the details about the scientists who have said, wow, this is a problem, folks. We better work on this.
So hang on, let's just sort this out. I mean, if in fact I didn't even know that the moon was getting further away from us. I mean, how long has it been getting further away from us?
It has been, what we know, reasonably, the reasonable estimate is that the moon has been slowly, I'm not sure that the exact figure that Mr. Hovind quoted is correct. You should ask an astronomer. But it has been slowly inching away from us. And in fact, astronomers have figured out pretty much how this is going on, how long this is going on, and how what the effects were on the early Earth. And there's no reason to believe whatsoever that this thing has been going on for more than the age of Earth itself, which is about 4 billion years.
So what started it moving away?
Yeah, it started moving away from at the beginning when the Earth-Moon system was actually formed.
How was it formed?
How was it formed?
Sure.
The current major theory, as far as I know, is actually the moon was captured as a planetoid by the original Earth. So the moon was probably formed as the rest of the solar system, and then it got into the Earth's orbit a little later on, not much later. We're talking about millions of years, not billions.
Well, I think you'd find the capture theory that you're proposing here has been disproven probably 30 years ago. The mathematics simply doesn't support it. It can't happen.
So, in your opinion, how did it form?
God created it.
Oh, God created. Put it down. I'm sorry. I forgot that you have the same exact answer for every single question. God did it.
Oh, no. I love science. I taught science for years.
Really?
Sure, and I don't think there's any conflict between
What do you think is science, anyway?
Science, the word science means knowledge, things that we know, things that we can observe, things that we can test and demonstrate. Evolution is not part of science. Evolution is a religion that many people believe in. More people believe in, Chinese religions probably. There's more of them than us.
Now, you realize, of course, that people that so-called believe in evolution actually includes people that believe in all sorts of religions, Christianity included.
Oh, certainly. There's a wide range of
How do you
beliefs
explain
out there.
that?
Well, a lot of people mix their science with their religion. That's what you do. You're a good scientist when it comes to botany and understanding plants, but you've mixed in your religion of evolution that these plants came from a rock 4.6 billion years ago.
Yeah. Well,
that's simply not the force.
It seems to me that the real problem here is that we're having a discussion, say in 2001, that we could have had about 3,000 years ago, and we would be on the same exact position. If we're having this discussion, say in ancient Greece about 1000 BC or 500 BC, Mr. Hovind would be arguing that lightning and the thunderstorms are proof of the existence of Zeus.
I would not be arguing that at all.
I think that's exactly the kind of argument that you're using now. You're saying if they don't understand how something actually occurred, then it must have been God. That's essentially your argument.
No, you're setting up a straw man. I understand. I understand how lightning occurs, okay?
Yeah, you do now, but 2,500 years ago, you wouldn't. You wouldn't have.
Just 30 years ago, you would have been saying dogmatically the Earth is 2.5 billion years old. That's what 3.5. That's what the textbook
I wouldn't have said anything dogmatically because it's not in the style of a scientist to say anything dogmatically. I started out this broadcast by saying that there is a possibility, of course, that the theory of evolution, like any other scientific theory, is incorrect. So I'm sorry, I don't subscribe to the dogmatic.
Do you think, Dr. Massimo, then there is a chance that God did create this planet, and this planet was only created 6,000 years ago?
For that to be true, of course there is a chance, but for that to be true, then God would have had to put things in a way, order things and arrange things in a way to try to fool us to believe that the Earth is actually much older. So he would have had to put a bunch of fossils in the right place as if they actually fossilized millions of years ago. Now, sure, that is possible because by definition, God can do whatever he wants. He's omnipotent. But the question is, why? Why would he bother doing anything of the sort? Why would God try to trick us into thinking that the Earth is actually billions of years old instead of 6,000?
Okay, well,
That's a pretty sick-minded God, if you ask me.
Ken, here we go. Fossils prove, surely, that this planet is a lot older than 6,000 years.
Oh, no. Fossils prove there was a worldwide flood that destroyed this place because fossils don't form unless animals are buried quickly. You can find fossil beds all over the world with millions of animals buried in them, and they're buried in twisted, contorted positions, and just about everybody agrees they're in waterborne sediment. The vast majority of fossils are from floods. And nobody ever puts it together and says, hey, maybe it was just one big flood that did the whole thing.
It amazes me. It amazes me that Mr. Hovind thinks that nobody else has ever figured any of these objections before, and he's this first guy who doesn't know anything about science and figures out all these things, and everybody else is wrong. This is so arrogant that it is unbelievable.
Well, first place,
of course, people have studied fossils for decades and decades.
Sure.
People know how fossils form. They form under a variety of conditions, by the way, not only under flooding conditions.
I said the majority. Okay. I said the majority of
No,
fossils.
not even the majority. They form buried, that's true. But the burying system process is not necessarily a flood. In fact, I'm pretty sure there are few fossils that have been demonstrated to actually be the result of a flood. And certainly not of floods that occurred simultaneously, and not of floods that occurred 6,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, whenever the Noah's flood actually is supposed to be occurred.
Okay, you're not far from Crossville, Tennessee. You need to go over to Crossville, Tennessee, and go to the coal mine, which is right there, where they have uncovered hundreds of petrified trees that are standing up. Yeah. They're running through all these different layers of rock that you say are different ages. I mean, it's right there in your back door. So don't tell me you know these layers are different ages. You simply do not know that. Go to Crossville, Tennessee. I'll call up the name of the mine in a second here.
Oh, don't worry. I got there, and in fact, I visited. I also asked my colleagues in geology if there is any problem whatsoever with these upright trees, and they said no. We've known about this phenomenon all over the world since a long time. There is no reason to revise geological theories according to that. This is the problem with creationism.
You didn't give me their answer. I want to know.
Hang on, I'm just interested. You're saying that there are fossilized trees that are standing upright.
There's pictures on the website.
Okay, that are going through different stratas of time.
According to the evolutionists, they're different stratas of time. According to me, they're not. They were all. See, that proves the layers were deposited quickly in a flood.
But Massimo, tell me, I mean, surely doesn't this prove something?
No, it doesn't. What's happening here is that there are a variety of geological phenomena that makes things a little more complicated for Mr. Hovind than he would like. For example, he could pick even a better example than the standing trees. He could tell you that there are some geological strata that have been dated to be younger than other strata that are in fact on top of them. And that doesn't make any sense, according to geological theory, until you realize that, in fact, the Earth hasn't been standing by waiting for us to look at these fossils or these strata. These things have been rearranged in a variety of ways, including actual turning over of entire sets of strata so that you have that kind of pattern. But you can reconstruct those movements simply because, as I said, you can date these things. And you can figure out from the surrounding geological strata what actually has happened. These things have been turned over, and the same goes for the trees. They've been changed, the position changes because the Earth moves. It's a very dynamic planet. So there is no problem. I mean, this is, again, this is a real straw man, not like the one that I was accused of bringing up before.
Okay, all you need to do, I mean, if you want to make up stories about how the Earth has moved and arranged these trees running through different layers...
I'm not making up stories.
You certainly are making up stories. This is baloney. Okay. Now, there are several layers of coal that run through your area there in Knoxville. And if you go to the Kettles mine, Kettles, Kettles
yes,
mine...
I know exactly. I told you, I've been there.
Okay, well then you find layers of coal that they date at one age. You dig down 30 feet and find another layer of coal that's dated at a much older age. Mm-hmm. Then you move over a little ways and you find a petrified tree connecting the two layers of coal. It did not form. Those layers all formed within a few weeks or months of each other. And the Bible says the world was destroyed by a flood. And a flood will automatically sort things. Go get a jar of dirt and put some water in it and shake it up and set it down. In a few seconds, it'll settle into layers right in your hand. Yeah. The layers form because of Noah's flood. But some people don't like the idea of God judging the world.
Why have we never found Noah's Ark?
I don't know that a wooden boat could last 4,400 years. What difference would that make? There are 270 surviving flood legends from countries all over the world. Why do these different countries that have no contact with each other all have a similar legend of a flood.
What about...
That's actually pretty simple to explain. And anthropology, again, contrary to what you think, anthropologists actually have asked these kind of questions before, and they actually come up with very reasonable solutions. It turns out, actually, the situation is not that simple. It's not that a lot of cultures across the globe have flood myths which seem to confirm a unique event that occurred a certain amount of time ago. What happens, actually, is that there is a variety of these myths. And lo and behold, all the cultures that have these myths are actually cultures that live in nearby large rivers. Well, that really doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that those cultures actually did experience floods. Of course, they were not worldwide floods, they were local floods. And the counterproof of this is that there are plenty of cultures that don't have these myths, and those are cultures that actually have not lived nearby areas that are floodable. How do you explain that? How is it that so many cultures, hundreds of cultures, don't have a flood myth, a universal flood myth?
Well, how many cultures don't live near water? I mean, come on, everybody lives near water. That's common sense.
It's not just water. It's not just water. It's about water that situations in an area in which you can have floods, large floods that kill people. Not everybody lives in those conditions. And again, there is a fact that you cannot explain. There is a fact of hundreds of cultures not having that myth. How do you explain that?
Oh, I'm sure there are countries today that don't have computers. What does that prove? Computers don't exist?
No, that is a complete non sequitur. It doesn't have anything to do with what I said. My question is, if there was a universal flood, you would expect, and you said yourself so 5 minutes ago, many cultures across the world to actually have that kind of mythology, because in fact it wasn't a mythology, it was a recollection, a dim recollection of a real event. So how do you explain the fact that hundreds of cultures don't have it?
Well, they forgot. People forgot. They forgot the value of pi for a long time.
Listen, guys, before we get... Can I ask another question? What about... Sure. Listen, what about the ice ages, which I thought were fairly well documented and dated? I mean, where do the ice ages fit into the theory of creationism?
Well, I think if the world was totally flooded by water, that's going to greatly upset the weather patterns for hundreds of years to come, especially as the flood water goes down. The Bible says in Psalm 104, the mountains arose and the valleys sank down and the water rushed off into the low places. And today the earth is 70% underwater. I mean, England is an island because there's a lot of water out there. There's enough water in the oceans right now to cover the earth about 1.5 miles deep. There's plenty of water to flood the world. And so as this water rushed off...
You're not answering the question.
I'm getting there. It carved features like Grand Canyon very quickly as this water rushed off. Then the ground's going to have to dry out. So the climate would be really screwed up for probably a few hundred years, and you would have ice ages coming and going for a few hundred years after this flood.
But I thought ice ages took thousands of years to come in and go out.
Yeah, they do not. I was just up in Anchorage, Alaska, where the glaciers advance and retreat much faster than they ever dreamed. You know, you get a warm season and it melts way back, and then you get a cold season.
Oh, yeah, way back, a few meters away.
Listen, guys, I'm going to...